We know the U.S. is cracking down hard on its southern border, and it's starting to work, at least for the moment. U.S. data shows in the 3 weeks after President Joe Biden brought in his stricter measures in June, the number of migrants crossing illegally dropped more than 40%. But lately, there are signs that the border crisis is expanding elsewhere.
Tonight, America's newest border crisis, this one up north.
The number of people crossing from Canada into New England is rising rapidly.
Take the Swanton sector. It's a 475-kilometer stretch along the Canada-U.S. border that encompasses parts of New York State, Vermont, and parts of New Hampshire. On the Canadian side, it borders Ontario and Quebec. And the U.S. Border Patrol agents have seen a sharp rise in illegal crossings. There, scenes like this have been common. Arrests along the side of the road of individuals trying to get into the U.S. from Canada. And the U.S. government is trying to deal with it by tightening the rules for asylum seekers. In order to understand the crackdown, we need to look at why the U.S. is paying more attention to its northern border, especially at irregular crossings. The number of migrants crossing illegally from Canada to the U.S. has gone up significantly in the last year. In just the first 7 months of 2024, U.S. border agents arrested more than 15,000 migrants. That might not be a lot compared to the southern border, but it's more than the total amount of people who were taken into custody for all of 2023. And it's way up from 2022 and 2021 combined. And it's not just about how many people, but where they're coming from that's complicating things. And we went through the numbers from U.S. Border Services, country by country. By far, the biggest increase was people coming from India.
In the case of the Canada-U.S. border, Indians are a very high number of the demographic that are being apprehended.
Just look at this chart. You can see the steep rise of encounters from 2021 to 2024 of Indian nationals. Just over 10,000 Indian nationals attempted to seek asylum in the U.S. from Canada between January and July of this year. So Indians now represent a majority of migrants seeking asylum at the northern border this year. Analysts we spoke with say that this demographic shift is significant because the more places people are coming from, the more difficult it is to process them. And that's putting more strain on an already overworked system.
Overall, when the United States is seeing higher arrivals of non-contiguous countries, it has a much harder time processing and quickly removing those people for logistic and resource reasons. It's harder to process someone and receive travel documents from a faraway country and then come up with a plane to send them back if that country will even accept them back.
There's a couple of things that make this a more difficult process. They need to verify documents and understand why people have come across. A language barrier makes all of that more complicated. What if the migrant and the officer can't easily communicate with each other?
If you're somebody who has a language that requires an interpreter that isn't readily available, those people are going to be at a huge disadvantage.
From the U.S. perspective, it all adds more resources, more time, and contributes to a ballooning backlog.
They were saying that they need millions of minutes of interpretation to handle current volumes.
All of this, experts say, is putting more strain on a strained system. So there are two changes for us to break down, and they're both connected to the Safe Third Country Agreement between the US and Canada. And that's a deal that goes back decades and forces refugees to make their claims in the first safe country they arrive in.
The US and Canada have been implementing this asylum agreement since 2004 under the premise that the two countries are safe enough for asylum seekers to request humanitarian protection. Migrants who cross into the US from Canada can be returned to Canada generally, and vice versa.
In order not to be sent back to Canada, in this case, they need to prove they meet a short list of exceptions.
If you have family in the country, for instance, then you're able to make the claim.
Unaccompanied minors are also given an exception, and there's a handful of other reasons. So let's stick with that example of a family connection, of a migrant trying to prove a family relationship to stay in the US. They need to provide documents, like a birth certificate or a marriage certificate, to prove that family connection. Previously, migrants could request a screening be postponed in order to gather the documents that they needed. That has changed.
Now people will have to have those ready to go at the time of screening.
No delays or postponement to gather evidence will be granted. Homeland Security agents will sit down with migrants and go through their story and documentation to understand whether they qualify to stay under the exemptions. The next change? Previously, anyone arriving was offered legal support. They were granted 24 hours from their apprehension to consult an immigration lawyer and prepare for that critical screening to decide if their claim moves forward. Now, that 24-hour window to speak with a lawyer has been cut down to just 4.
Shortening the window down to 4 hours really means that this is a very tight window for migrants to be trying to obtain counsel and prepare for these interviews.
And reaching a lawyer is a whole other challenge. In many cases, U.S. nonprofit legal services are already overwhelmed, and there's a shortage of asylum lawyers. Often, the best asylum seekers can do is leave a message with a hotline and hope that someone calls back.
I think for some asylum claimants, it will be very difficult for them to access the legal help that they need in 24 hours.
Now, for the American government, shortening that window may accomplish a couple things.
These changes seem aimed at speeding up how the steps of that process work and trying to streamline that process so that it goes faster so that people can be removed more quickly if they're not eligible.
But longer term, this may be about something bigger.
The U.S., because it is seeing its own increase at the American border, is trying to also tighten these rules to be more restrictive and to send a message of deterrence to migrants who are thinking about going into Canada and then crossing into the U.S. illegally.
That same change, shortening that window to speak with a lawyer from 24 hours to 4 hours, also happened at the southern U.S. border with Mexico earlier this summer. President Biden signed an executive order that temporarily allowed U.S. authorities to deport migrants who entered the country illegally without processing their asylum request. That order kicks in when there's been more than 2,500 illegal crossings every day for a week.
This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage.
As we said at the start, we're seeing the impact of these changes already in the South. But even with increasing numbers at the northern border, it's not even close to the level of what's happening in the South. The experts we spoke to had some thoughts on that too.
We're a drop in the bucket relative to what's happening on the southern border. But I think that, it's all, policy is being heavily influenced by politics at this point.
I'm not surprised to see more action during an election year on the northern border.
The new border rules came into effect August 14th with little to no warning. Now, it's a matter of time, waiting for the election dust to settle to see if they make a significant difference.